In this series, I'll talk about my current process to create YouTube videos. There are two reasons for doing this. One, it might be fun to revisit these processes a couple of years down the road and laugh. And two, if you have liked something that I do in my videos, you may find out more about it in here. Throughout the video, I will give you a couple of tips. These tips are not from creating YouTube video experience. Well, one or two might be, but more from my experience working in IT all my life. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Number 1. Idea. Obviously. Followed by research if applicable, and when there is no idea, then just make a video about making videos. Easy. Number 2. Script. Now, I don't like unless it's done on purpose. When I record myself off the cuff, I'll get a lot of those. Also, I found my voice fluctuates a lot more. If you think you will sound unnatural reading a script, well, if you're over 18, I would advise you to watch the movie Reservoir Dogs. Mainly for the scene where Freddy, played by Tim Roth, learns how to tell an amusing anecdote. It really is a scene on masterful storytelling. I'm using notes on iPad to write down the initial script, which often happens when I'm sitting outside enjoying our British sun. No real formatting, just a bunch of thoughts, often repeated in different ways. Once I have a basic script done, I take it to LibreOffice. It's time to arrange my written thoughts. Remove all the duplicates to get to a final draft for me to read. Tip 1. There is another advantage. You can copy your entire script to YouTube Auto-Transcribe to generate almost perfect subtitle with almost zero intervention. 3. Recording audio. For the first couple of videos, I started on the video portion first, but then realized it would have been easier to pace if I started with audio instead. I'm using a cheap and cheerful Behringer XM8500 XLR microphone. I think it was around 13 pounds. With a basic pop filter that is going into a Behringer Q1202 USB mixer. I bought it during sale and now it goes for around £80. This has Xanax mic preamps, which are supposed to be quite good, and ultra musical British channel EQs. With 12 inputs where 4 being XLR, it is a bit overkill. But if I ever needed to do any kind of mix, this would suffice. Tip number 2. Well, I might be cheating with this one. You need a good headphone. Honestly, though I have a couple of headphones, I didn't follow this advice for 2 of my videos. Now playing side by side, I can hear my difference. Simply put, laptop or basic computer speakers are not that good and can produce a lot narrower band of frequency, which means there might be errors that you will just not hear, especially low bands. I am using Logitech G433 gaming headset and I did get it for games. The microphone on this headset is okay to talk while playing games, but I wouldn't use it for voiceover. I think this might be a discontinued model now, as I cannot find price for any new ones. Refurbished G433 goes for around £55. Sound-wise, it's quite nice, and comes with breathable ear pads, and honestly, those pads are great. As for other hardware, I'm using Logitech C920 webcam. It only does 1080p at 30 fps, but the video quality is very good. Currently they're going for $89.99. I also have a knockoff action cam if I needed a 4K footage. But between us, often I use my iPad to take picture. As the final video resolution is 1080p, I even have to shrink an iPad photo, so not much loss there. Just ensure there is enough light, as most of these cameras have a really small sensor and gets very noisy at low light. Finally, a tripod. I also have some gear from my photography days. some floodlights with diffuser and green screen. The green screen is still waiting for its debut though. Oh, mixer is set to Unity with 60 dB gain for the microphone channel, 0 compression, 0 EQ. As it uses a single knob for compression, I prefer to do it in software. Not as good, but does give me more control. Moving to actual recording, I'm using Audacity, which is cross-platform and free. It looks dated though, and reminds me of Windows 95. That being said, it does the job nicely. Currently, I'm not monitoring myself while recording my voiceover. And with only one mic, there is no latency issue. If it ever came to that, I would most probably have to use ASIO drivers. The reason for me to point it out is Audacity natively doesn't support ASIO. There are a couple of other free alternatives like Ocean Audio and Wevasaur that can record using ASIO host. Inside Audacity, I'm using WAS API audio host and recording in mono 16-bit 44 kHz. Time for a top tip. Tip number 3, clap. Even after all this script, I still make mistakes while recording. Every time that happens, I clap near my microphone loud enough to cause a clipping in my recording. Audacity has an option to show clipping. So once the recording is completed, I will see red lines in my waveform where those errors were made, which makes it super fast to locate. I also use Silence Finder feature in Audacity to locate any pause. This happens at times when I take an extended breath or use the mouse. I save the file at this point with the prefix raw. This is to remind me that no processing has been done to this file. This is just in case I ever needed the original for whatever reason. Now I need to treat this raw audio to final, usable version. First step is noise reduction. I'm not in a treated room in recording context. I have my PCs running, so there is some background noise. When recording, I always make sure I leave at least 5 seconds of room noise at the end when I'm not speaking. I will use this part for capturing the noise profile, which would then be applied to the full file. For the last couple of videos, I'm dealing with my breathing noise at this point instead of at the end. It's my personal preference. I don't like those inhale sounds. Instead of manually editing, which is okay for a small recording, but it gets tiresome after a while, I'm now using a noise gate. This is called by different name in different software. At the end, as the name suggests, it simply works like a gate, i.e., you can set a minimum and maximum dB, and anything within the range would be allowed, or the gate would be open. For Audacity, you will need to download this plugin. Ocean Audio has this plugin installed by default. I only need to worry about minimum value, and max is set to maximum. To figure out what this minimum value is, well, tip number 4, use the average RMS value, unless... I love the math here. So this will only work when you're speaking mostly in even volume. So this is the deal. When we speak, some letters are louder than others. For some words, we even trail off at the end. When viewing the waveform, you will see peaks and valleys. And hopefully, the breathing would have a lower decibel than the softest part of your voice. If your inhale or exhale sound is louder, then you might want to control your breathing instead of trying to fix it in post-process. Just confirm that this average value you have is less than the softest part of your voice. This is just a visual confirmation by looking at the waveform. Unless you're very loud most of the time and then whisper for a short time, this method would work well. Once I run this process, it looks super clean. Some places though, when I'm talking fast, I might take in a very quick breath. I'm okay with that. This can be cleaned by lowering attack and release settings for the gate itself. I have my attack set to 1 millisecond and release to 100 millisecond. After every action, it's your responsibility to ensure it did exactly what you wanted. There is no real shortcut to it. I would also suggest getting used to spectral view. You will soon recognize your breath by just looking in this view. I feel like Neo, I'm seeing voices. I saved this file with NR prefix. Next step. Well, recently I purchased a bundle from Isotope. They normally make really high-end audio plugins and does wonder with audio. I don't know how to use it. Well, I know how to use it, but not how to use it well. A lot of features are involving mixing, which currently I'm not interested in. The part I use is fairly straightforward. I'll mention what I did before I had these plugins later on. With Isotope, I use RX7 Audio Repair Toolkit. I give it my file and run the Repair Assistant wizard, specifying it's a dialog type material. RX7 analyzes my clip and sets up filter chain that it has detected to be required. We're talking about declicking, declipping, dehum, denoise, and so on. Once I have previewed and happy with the result, I apply the filter chain or render it. Next, within RX Editor, I will run another Isotope plugin called Nectar. Another wizard, seeing my vibes to dialogue and letting it analyze my clip. Even if nothing else, this looks seriously cool. It analyzes voice signal to determine optimal settings and pitch correction, subtractive EQ to improve clarity, DSR, dynamic compressor, and a subtle reverb. Before Isotope, using only Audacity. First, I would apply a compressor. Quick basic refresher on compressor. As you're recording yourself, you might be whispering at one moment and shouting the very next. Unless this is exactly what you want, one would like to fix that. A compressor tries to bring the high part of the volume down. I have seen some videos where they suggest that you set this value to -14 decibel. That is stupid and makes no sense. This threshold value would completely depend on your clip and your particular scenario. Next, DSR. Well, Audacity doesn't have DSR plugin out of the box. There are some free plugins that are rather good. I used one called Dead Duck Free Effects Bundle. It has 25 VST plugins for both 32 and 64-bit host. Next effect, click removal if needed. Then I would use filter curve for high pass and low pass filter. Again, some YouTube videos suggest you run a bass boost followed by a treble boost. That is a bad idea. I'll explain why for bass. If you look at the bass boost filter curve, we see the gain applied to anything lower than 500 Hz, with around 10 decibel gain at 100 Hz or lower. Bloody hell. Of course, I'm talking about voiceover only. A typical adult male voice has a fundamental frequency of 85 to 180 Hz. A typical adult female from 165 to 255 Hz. Of course, unless you're Barry White, in which case what? It's about -20 Hz? So you see, vocals typically do not contain a lot of sub-frequency energy, and they often add nothing valuable to modern mixes. It is common practice to roll off sub-frequency contents of vocals, as it clears up room for instruments that should occupy these lower frequencies, such as bass guitar or kick drum. So this bass boosts that entire sub-frequency by 10 bloody dB. Imagine having a low rumbling washing machine running. That would get picked up on and boosted. There should be a graphics on the screen showing a better filter curve for voiceover. Now that covers replacing Isotope section with Audacity. Tip number 5. Editing is not miracle. If your source is bad, no amount of editing would help. If possible, try to get a clean and even recording. If everything has gone according to plan, now I should have quite an even waveform. Maybe a couple of peaks where I might have over-accentuated a syllable or two. I will normalize the whole clip to -3 dB at this time. Usually I see my average around -8 dB, most high around -6 dB, with couple of those over-accentuated at -3 dB. As Audacity has no non-destructive editing, I'll copy the clip into a new track and apply a hard limit to -5 dB. Using the waveform, I can now go to these points and play back to ensure it still sounds okay. One final normalize to -3 dB and audio is done. To be extra precise, you can download a plugin for Audacity called ACS Check. In short, it's a quality control standard used by many audiobook providers, and they really want clean audio. Next, the visual part. But first, let's quickly go through my primary tools. I will talk about the secondary later. First, any web browser, and any extension or application that would allow you to download videos. For some of my series, I need news videos, and this is the method I use. To edit images, well, I've been using Photoshop for over 25 years, and recently, it became a bit too expensive, and I hate subscription model. As an alternative, currently I'm using Affinity Photo, which is almost like Photoshop and a lot cheaper, i.e. one-time payment instead of subscription. If you're looking for a free alternative, I would definitely recommend GIMP. It's just with my Photoshop background, it was easier to migrate to Affinity. For video capturing, I'm using OBS. Though it's primarily designed for broadcasting, it also does a great job of capturing from multiple sources and save to disk. For video editor, Premiere is way too expensive and too bloated. I did some work on that, but it was when it was in version 6. I started with Headphone, which seemed easy and powerful enough, and it's completely free. No watermark with 4K video output. It does have a pro version and plugins that you can purchase. I got their content creator bundle to show my support. It gives me some additional plugins. Recently, I'm trying to move to DaVinci Resolve. It's a way more professional software and almost comparable to Premiere. It has a node-based editing, which looks like it will take a bit of a time to get used to. Maybe on the next video on this series, I'll have an update on that. Oh, and Resolve is also free without watermark. I think after some time, we all find a style that we like or works. For some of my series, I like a comic book type look, where other series is more like a pencil sketch. If the style you're trying to achieve can be done within the video editor itself, that would most probably be the fastest method. Unfortunately, Headphone doesn't have the effects I want. It has a black and white halftone for free, and the color one is a paid plugin. Even with the black and white halftone, I could see that it wouldn't really work. Right now I'm doing it the long-winded way. Maybe I'll find a way to speed it up. So suppose I have a video I would like to debunk that needs to look like a comic book. First, I would trim this video down to exactly what I need. This is quite important. If I want to use a 30 seconds clip at 30 frames per second, that is 900 frames. So to me, every second's count. Once I have the video all trimmed, I would export it from Headphone as PNG image sequence. Now to change all those exported images to comic book like effect, I have tried Photoshop and it takes absolutely ages. For my use case, Affinity worked faster by many magnitude. Obviously I created a macro or action in Photoshop. It's now just a batch process of applying that macro to all exported images. Let it do its magic in background while I do something else. Once all the files are processed, I can re-import this image sequence back as video and overlay on top of the original video. Now I have a comic book looking video with correct audio in sync. At other times, it might be a set of different images. Again, I would apply any style if needed and apply the transition within Headphone. Secondary tools. Well, as I most probably am the worst person on the planet when it comes to drawing, at the same time, I did want some easy way to make animation. This genre is called whiteboard animators and is designed to make it, well, super easy. Most comes with a bunch of pre-drawn items and you just drag and drop. Now maybe because it's a relatively new genre, there is no true free version. Either there is a limit on video length, quality, or even number of downloads per month. I got Doodly on offer for a one-time payment. Normally most of them are subscription based. These apps also work like a super basic editor. Way too basic and well, horrible. In Doodly, each screen is called a scene. I tried creating a video from an 11-minute audio clip and the software got quite slow and unresponsive. So what did I learn and what's my suggestion? Well, don't try to sync audio in Doodly. Instead, well, first let's understand a simple concept. If you have a 2 seconds video at 30 frames per second, you have 60 frames of data. If you stretch this video to 3 seconds, your video editor has to create the missing 30 frames using interpolation. However, if you compress it to 1 second, your video editor has to get rid of 30 existing frames. So obviously you can see how compressing time length is better than stretching it. This is what I'm doing now. I'm willing to give each scene 5 seconds to draw. This is especially true when I'm just getting it to draw a raster image. For each scene, I also give it half a second delay at the end of the drawing. So almost no editing is done within Doodly. Now rendering in Doodly takes absolutely ages. That's the reason not to get too overboard with scene time. Finally, when I bring it in Headphone, I will start chopping up the video into individual scenes. To me, each of these scene segment has 3 parts. Initial drawing that would take 5 seconds, followed by a pause of half a second, and then the scene end transition. It's the middle part where no visual movement is happening, and is the perfect part to stretch to match the audio timeline. So with all the videos and images in hand, next is just to create the whole video by placing them in timeline. When saving the videos and images, I would name them numerically to make the placement order easier. I'm almost done now. I just need to find some background music and hopefully it will be appropriate and lay it down. Tip 6. If you have a collection of background music, it might be wise to batch normalize them all to between -20 dB to -30 dB. For my earlier videos, I didn't have it in place, which resulted in unlevel background music track. Imagine you have a 3 minutes background music. You place it down, listen to first minute and decide it needs to be at 8 dB lower. Now, unbeknown to you, that background music gets a lot louder near the end of the track. All of a sudden, you have your voiceover drowned in background music. Having all those normalized to a same level and knowing what the level is helps in this case. In broadcasting, voice is normally kept between -3 dB to -6 dB, where background music is between -20 dB and -30 dB. That's it. All finished, time to export and upload. This being the first video in this series, it's a lot longer than I wanted it to be. Future updates should in theory focus more on specific and more tips. As you might have noticed that this is quite a new channel, and during this genesis, comments and subscribe counts a lot more than usual. If you have enjoyed this video, I would implore you to like the video and maybe post a comment to feed YouTube algorithm. You can even be a superstar and subscribe as well. You have any questions, please ask away. Also, check out some of my other videos for similar contents. Thank you and have a safe day. Signing off.